mindful breathing exercise to quiet our mind. And we can try to reflect, contemplate. As long as we are in samsara, there is no end to problems. Something happens all the time. You know, while we are experiencing one problem, one suffering, another problem arises. While it is still not finished, another problem arises. Never ending. Almost very tiring. But that is what samsara is. So if we don't want to experience this endless, tiring problem, never-ending problem, we need to free ourselves from the samsara. And to free from samsara means freeing from all the delusions, all the negative emotions. And in order to overcome all those negative emotions, we need to cultivate those positive emotions that could counteract those negative emotions. That can act as an antidote remedy towards those negative emotions. And to be able to cultivate and improve and increase the positive state of mind, emotions, thought, such as loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta mind, wisdom, and so forth. we need to practice continuously by studying, reflecting, contemplating, meditating on them again and again, continuously. And for that, we need to be reminded, and that's why we have come here together to talk about those practices. So we'll be reminded. And the reason to be reminded is so that we can continue to apply and integrate in our everyday life as much as possible. Then with the time, over the years, so we can begin to see small transformation changes in our attitude, in our actions, behavior. May all of us coming together to learn to study the Dharma, become cause and conditions to reduce and eventually, gradually overcome all those negative emotions, all those afflictive emotions. Become cause and conditions to cultivate and develop more loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, mind, and wisdom. And be more support, help, benefit, and service to other sentient beings. And gradually achieving our own highest potential, the fully awakened state. So we can serve all sentient beings in the best way and in most effective and skillful way. Okay. To the founder, the endowed, transcended, destroyer, the one gone beyond, the four destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, the Lord of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcended, destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subdued from the Shakya clean, I prostrate, make offering, and go for refuge. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three ever devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms, atoms, in all aspects. With the supreme faith, I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous action, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberrations, a flame of a lime, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, sea, condition, things as such. To this merit, may all sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the four false and be delivered from samsaric ocean, perturbed by the weight of aging, sickness, and death. Sa shibe ge chon shin me do dang ri ra le je yin de yin ba de sang ge shin du mi de u wa do kun nama da shin I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit I create to listen to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Chodan Soke Chonam La Changchu Pato Dane Kyabsa Daki Choshe Kipe Chonam Lola Benje Sangye Choba Sangye Chodan Soke Chonam La Changchu Pato Dane Daki Choshe Kipe Chonam Lola Benje Sangye Choba. I think it it become more and more clear why we need to practice the Dharma, why we need to practice the Lojong. Without the Dharma practice and Lojongs and those tools, it is easy to get crazy. We have our own individual challenges, problems, in our life. On top of that, and we see so many things that is happening around the world, it is, with this pandemic, the political situations, and then now we see all this kind of, due to the climate changes, or things that is happening that is bringing so much pain and suffering to so many people, directly, indirectly, in the world. So when you are constantly see it, hear it, it can be very kind of overwhelming, depressing. And that could lead us to, many other emotions as well, fear, worry, anxiety. And that could also lead to a lot of frustration, impatience, anger, and so forth, So, and then again, we make things even worse. Things are happening externally, and then not being able to cope with those external challenges, suffering, and our mind being in those negative state of emotions, and it creates more pain, more suffering, more problems, more difficulty to ourselves and towards others, who are around ourselves, If I'm kind of if my mind is very low and down, or there's a depressed, overwhelmed, or anger, frustration, impatient, whatever, it's not only going to affect just me, it's going to affect people around me. The very people who cares about you are going to be affected because they cannot see you being so depressed, so frustrated, so much anxieties, all of that. So not only it affects you, it affects the very people around you. And it brings so much pain and suffering to all your families, friends, anyone who cares about you, you know. So, but if we don't have the tools, even you don't want to be that state, you can't stop being in that state, you know. Nobody wants to be in those states, but a lot of time people doesn't have the tool to cope and deal with that. And so I think Dharma is so important, especially those Lojong practice, and so important because those teachings and practice give us the tool to cope and deal with those difficulties, challenges, and situations without being too overwhelmed, without being too much overwhelmed by too much fear or anxiety and worries, and without leading us to be too much frustrated with the situation that we see in the world, and too much anger and frustrations, you know, because that doesn't help us, that doesn't help others, doesn't help anyone's. It doesn't help the world to be in better, you know. On the other hand, if we can keep our mind more calm, more peaceful, maybe then that can help, not only help us, it will help people around us, even people who are feeling frustrated with the situation. When they see you calm and peaceful, that can give them that kind of effect, make them more calm, peaceful. And because with that kind of more calm, peaceful, we'll be able to see things more better, the whole, whether it's your individual situation or the whole, the global situations, to see with more open mind. And then maybe we might be able to find better way that how we can participate and to make it better, and how we can help in what way, in what constructive way that we can contribute towards the betterness of the situations and in the world itself. So I think, yeah, we should try to feel very grateful, rejoice, to have this access to the Dharma, the tools, and then trying to use as much as possible, applying as much as possible, you know. So yeah. So I think as we have been going through the 7 point of mind training, and we are in point 6, the commitments of the Lojong mind training. And I have been told by I've been told that I kind of missed 2 lines from point number 5, and I don't know. I did mention, you know, those 5, the last 2 lines of that 5 point, the measure of having trained the mind. And I might mention, you know, most of the other root verses, there is no mention of these 5 marks of trained mind. I already mentioned before, I think I've only found these versions, which only mention this one. And I don't know whether even those are so important of that, but since maybe it is so anyway, those 5 great marks are mentioned as the great perseverance. That means when suffering, harm befall on us, that our mind doesn't become so easily angry, frustrated, so that we have the patience, the ability to remain calm without being too delusional by those, and great being is the second, and that means because, we started to cherish other sentient beings than ourselves as we practice in the Bodhisattva path. And so that is through the training of the mind and the Lojong, then you begin to cherish others more than yourself. So in that way, then is a great being, the great virtuous being, the great virtues is, because in all our activities, whatever activity that we do, we try to do with all of that with the 10 virtuous actions, we do not, our action does not never depart from the practice of 10 virtuous actions. And the great discipliner, the great discipline, or the great discipliner is, again, whatever we engage with our body and speech, we never engage with one of those negative 10 non-virtuous actions, yeah, so we don't engage with any of those 10 non-virtuous actions. And the great yogi, being of great yogi, so great yogi means, that whatever we practice in our everyday life, we practice the great Mahayana practice, Mahayana path, never losing from the bodhicitta intentions, motivations, so those are the kind of the 5, the great mark that, and then I think at the end of that, the trained mind retain control even when distracted, and I think maybe that, I don't know, I might have already told, but I'm not so sure. So that is, what it means is, normally if we pay attention, if we are more mindfulness, and if we are more aware, when we face certain situations, especially difficult situations, harmful situations, challenging situations, and so forth, we are able to, because of our mindful and awareness, we are able to kind of keep our mind more calm, peaceful. But when we don't have that kind of mindfulness and awareness, and when our mind get a little bit distracted because we are not in the mindful state, we are not in awareness state, and when we face certain kind of those situations, then our mind gets frustrated or angry, one of those negative emotions arising, and not being able to apply that situation into the path, that happens when we pay attention and mindful awareness. We are able to kind of keep our mind a little bit more in positive state and more calm, and we are able to maybe transform to the path to some way. But when we are not in that state, then we are unable to do it. Then we are overtaken by one of those negative emotions, and we are not being able to transform the difficult situation into the path. But through practice over the time, when we practice the mind training, Lojong, over the times, continuously, weeks, months, years, then there come a point, reach a point, even when you are not so mindful, even your awareness is not there at that in the moment, when that any difficulties, challenging problem arise, immediately, naturally, you are able to transform in the path. You are able to transform in the path. If you are able to do that, then that is sign that you have your Lojong has been, your practice of Lojong have been trained. You can see that you have made a progress. It's a sign of being progress of your practice, So then, because of familiarity with the meditations and familiarity over the time, then it becomes very natural. And when it becomes so natural, you don't have to think about it. Even you are not mindful, you just respond in that way. You just think in that way. And naturally, and that is what it means, Of course, it will be great to be in that state, but it takes a time when practice, So we have to be also realistic and, and be patient. For example, delusions, because we have so much familiarity with the delusions, I don't have to make any effort for the delusion to arise. I don't have to put any effort. I don't have to be mindful. I don't have to be, I have to have awareness. I don't need to put any effort. I see something behaving in a strange way, or I see someone saying something, immediately, one of your mind is disturbed. Or I see some objects that I like, and attachment just arises spontaneously, naturally. That comes whether you are distracted or undistracted. It doesn't matter. Even I'm not distracted. Even I'm trying to kind of, do something, fully focus, and suddenly something happens, and your mind, boom, gone, like that. And that happens because of familiarity. And so with the practice, we don't have so familiarity at the moment. And so that is what it is. Meditation is about making familiarity with that. We keep on doing that, keep on repeating, doing that. And with that familiarity, slowly, it becomes kind of like a habit. Our attitude can be a habit. Our behavior can be a habit. And with the familiarity, then you don't have to think about it, conscious effort. You don't have to make any conscious effort that it become so that is what it's talking about. When our practice reaches to that point like that, then it is a sign that we have made some progress in that, that trained the mind. But that doesn't mean even we have all these signs of that we have trained our mind, it doesn't mean we should not continue to practice. Okay? It is just an evaluations and sign that we have made some progress, but we need to continue to practice until we become fully enlightened. So, but of course, become more and more easier, less and less effort as our practice improve and increase and get better, you know, and it become more and more natural, you know, and so I think that is the, I think, because I think that is I think our great SPC Mary wrote me that I missed these 2 lines, so I have to cover that. Otherwise, I would be in trouble. And then also I was kind of asked, because they say like in that commitment, the 6th one, on the 5th, where it says, don't speak the other's incomplete qualities. I think I already finished that one, and 5th and 6th, but she says she has forgot to record it, so again, I don't want to go too much, you know, don't speak it. What it means is, you know, being mindful of our speech, you know, watching our mind, our speech, being mindful of our speech, and then trying to avoid any speech that could hurt and harm others. That could hurt and harm others by expressing others, you know, others I guess shortcomings. For example, in terms of, it could be, you know, maybe people who have a physical disability or challenges, you know, so making, you know, that if you say someone, let's say someone who is a, you know, blind, and saying blind, it could hurt them, you know, and like that, based on their physical challenges, mental challenges, you know, whatever shortcoming that they might have, as well as their spiritual shortcoming, you know, maybe some people might have spiritual shortcomings, you know, and so again, you know, using our saying you are not a good practitioner, or, you know, or you are too arrogant, or, you know, or you are too jealousy, all kind of things that could hurt and harm them, you know. So basically, being mindful of our speech and trying to avoid any speech that can hurt and harm others. And then second, that is 6 and 7, yes, that is the 5th, and 6 is don't concern yourself with others' business. Is me. So the reason why we have the reason why we have that kind of hurtful and harmful speech a lot of time, because it comes with our mind, because we think on others' problems, others' faults, others' defect. And so is saying, stop thinking about others' fault and other defect, you know, and others, not only speech, but stop thinking about that. If you think about that, then naturally that will come in your speech, you know. And so, and yeah, instead we try to see the positive side of other people, instead of trying to, you know, find someone's faults and defect, thinking about that. We should try to find someone's positive qualities. Think about someone's positive qualities. You know, we all have as ordinary human beings, we have positive qualities and negative qualities. And if you think of negative qualities of someone else, it hurts and harms others indirectly, as well as it makes you more negative. On the other side, if you think of positive qualities of others, if you reflect on positive quality of, you have a more positive thoughts. And the point is trying to reduce those negative thoughts as much as possible, increase positive thought as much as possible. So I think, yeah. And then 7, train to counter whichever disturbing emotions is greatest, the 7. So that is, and the reason why we cannot stop thinking about others' faults, others' shortcomings, sometimes we don't want to think about sometimes we don't want to think about others' defect, others' problems, not problem, others' defect and shortcomings and faults. But sometimes we can't stop, isn't it? When you are watching a news, what the president says or someone other says, you don't want to think bad about him, but sometimes you can't stop. Sometimes you can't stop. It's not that you want to think about it, you try not to think about it, but sometimes you can't stop those negative thoughts arising of negative thought about, the faults and the defect and shortcoming and all of that. And the reason why we cannot stop is because of our delusions. Because our delusions. Why we have those negative thoughts? Why we cannot stop those negative thoughts? Thinking badly about someone. Because of our negative thoughts. Maybe there is anger, maybe there is resentment, maybe there is ignorance. Or maybe other negative emotions. Maybe there is frustrations that lead to us to have all these different negative thoughts. For a bodhisattva, true bodhisattvas, they will be concerned with someone, with their behavior, their actions and that. They will be concerned and have compassion, the pain and suffering that is being done to so many beings because of that person's behavior and actions. They will feel compassion for that. They will feel compassion about who is doing that, the better person who is creating that pain and problem. They will have compassion. They will have concern, but they wouldn't have a negative thoughts. They wouldn't have a negative thought towards that person. And the very reason why we have negative thoughts at the moment is because of there is a delusions that give rise to those negative thoughts. And so therefore, so now is, so these verses is explaining that we need to live more deeper level on the first two, the 5th and 6th, why we have that kind of speech and why we have that kind of negative thoughts. And so to understand deeper level where that come from, where does that negative thought come from? Where does that harmful speech come from? And to understand that it's coming from our own delusions, And so if we understand that, then we will pay more attention to the delusion and trying to reduce and overcome the delusions. If we don't understand that, then we will not pay so much attention to the delusion itself. But if we understand then we understand the main cause of such speech and such thoughts. Those such a harmful negative thought is a result of our own delusions, and therefore we need to work with the delusions. And when we talk about delusion, then it is a lot, at least with me. I think in a Buddhist teachings, psychology, they talk about 6 root delusion, 21 secondary delusions, 20 secondary delusions, and I think I have all of them. So and then there is more than that. Many other delusions, maybe probably not described in some of those texts, So then it becomes like where to start, Of course, we would like to overcome all the delusion immediately with one go away, If there is a way, definitely I would like to do that, Overcome all the delusions, just one way, But unfortunately, that might not be the case. At least those Lojongs and the Lamrim, as they said, it's a gradual path. If there is a way that we can destroy all the delusion completely, immediately, that would be great, and we should all. But here it's not that way, and so therefore, first, of course, ideally, we want to overcome all the delusions completely from the very root of it, but that does not happen immediately. So we need to reduce. At the very beginning, we try to reduce the delusions. And then eventually overcome them completely. That then they never arise again. And when we talk about reducing and minimizing, that could mean many things, Sometimes it's reducing and minimizing the intensity of the delusion, Before is very intense. For example, anger. You can say before you used to have very intense anger, and as you started practicing, working with that, then then it's over the time. Even though you still have anger, but it is not as intense as before. In that way, it had been reduced. So then you still have anger, or any other delusions, but now it's not so intense as it used to be. And that is some progress. And another way is before you have very frequent, whether it's anger or any other delusion, jealousy or anything, very frequent, but with the practice, now you have less frequent. You still have, but not as frequent as before. That is a progress. That means your practice has been able to reduce that particular delusions to a certain degree. And so this is how we try to, reduce and eventually overcome completely. And even though we would like to apply the antidote towards all the delusion at the same time, but unless you have the realization of emptiness and certain higher practice, you will not be able to do that. And so therefore, the idea is to trying to look in ourselves and identify ourselves and recognize what is the biggest delusions in me that become the source of big problem for me. you know, because we all have different, even though we might have all the delusions, but for some people, because of their predominant, because of their predispositions and imprint, they might have more predominant anger. And some people, they might not have, the anger is not predominant, but maybe attachment might be more predominant. For some, that might not be the case. Jealousy is more predominant. For some, you know, arrogance is more predominant. For some, you know, selfish attitude, self-centeredness, self-obsessiveness might be predominant. And that is becoming a problem to oneself and problem to others. So we try to identify, look at ourselves, you know, among all this, among many delusions that I have, among so many delusions that I have, which is the most strongest and which is the delusion, which is most strongest and which is the main problem, cause of main problem. Once we identify that, then we try to put all our practice towards it in order to reduce it, in order to overcome it. So that is what it's saying, you know. So we need to deal with delusion, and in terms of dealing with the delusions, first identifying the strongest delusions and the main delusion that is the main cause of our biggest problems, and then trying to apply, you know, all the practice towards reducing and overcoming that. That is what it is. So of course, with each of those delusions, there are, you know, specific kind of practice, meditations. And so we study that and we learn that and we try to apply those particular antidote, those particular meditation practice in relation to that particular delusions, you know, and starting with the stronger delusions. Because subtle delusions, also it is easy to identify the strongest delusions. Subtle delusion is more difficult to identify. Stronger delusion is more easy to identify, more easy to recognize it. But the subtle delusions is much more difficult to identify and much more difficult to recognize. But if we start to overcome the strongest and gross level of the delusions, and as we are able to reduce and overcome them, then slowly we will be able to identify even the subtle level of the delusion. We will be able to recognize and identify the subtle delusion as well. And then we can try to also apply antidote towards them. But we start with the strongest, the grossest one, and you know. So once we identify, maybe it could be attachment, it could be anger, it could be jealousy to one of them, you know, or other ones. Once we have identified every practice we do, we try to apply or bring all practice towards overcoming that delusions. For example, if you are dealing with the anger, whatever meditation you do, you try to, you know, you try to apply to overcome that anger, for example. always. Even when we do purifications, even though we try to purify all the negative karma, all the delusion, but we try to make specific effort to overcome that anger. For example, if someone's anger is stronger, you are dealing with anger, then you try to do that. If you are doing some kind of creating a merit, whatever form of practice to create merit, again, while you are trying to create merit in general, virtues, positive karma, merit, but especially again, you try to, I'm going to specifically with anger in here, I'm going to create all this merit so that I have enough merit and enough virtues to overcome this anger. Whatever form of meditation you are doing, I'm going to do this meditation so that I can have more, more convictions, more strength, and better practice, stronger practice, so that I can overcome the anger. And even we do it, taking a refuge, or Guru devotion, whatever, again, while we try to receive the blessings of all the Buddhas and Gurus, of the body, speech, and mind, all the realization, and specifically receiving the blessing, to overcome this anger. So basically, whatever practice, Dharma practice you do, whatever you do, everything you try to direct towards overcoming the delusions, that particular delusion. And in that way, then, we will have more success in reducing, minimizing, and overcoming them. Instead of spending a couple of minutes trying to deal with that delusion once a while, it is not going to have much effect. But if you apply, if you relate, if you can bring every practice that you do throughout the day in towards that, then it can be effective. And of course, we try to do particular meditation that deal with particular specific meditations that deal with that particular delusions. You can also that. So that is the meaning of that. And so in order to do that, we need a strong practice of mindfulness and awareness or alertness, all the time. Important. And that is why also in the 8 verses of mind training, in all your activities, exam, in all your activities or your activities, through your 3 doors, exam all the time, and the moment delusion arises, by understanding how it destroys oneself and others, how it harms oneself and others, try to apply the antidotes immediately without any delay, And so like that, we try to apply that, and to be able to examine all the time, then that is where you need the mindfulness and the introspections or alertness or vigilant, And so we try to apply that So that is the meaning of that, train to counter whichever disturbing emotion is the greatest. So again, here, as I mentioned, it's just teach us to be gradual. First, you work with which is strongest, and then you work with which is middle, and then the subtle, and that is how the way is, that is more effective for us for the ordinary beings or beginners, you know. Then the next commitment is give up every hope of reward. So when you are trying to practice the Dharma, you know, and here specifically the Lojong, you know, when we are trying to practice the Lojong, we shouldn't have any kind of reward. I mean, any kind of expectations of the reward. You know, generally, when you engage in our worldly life, when we do something, we always kind of hope and expect some kind of a reward, you know. But here, he is saying we should let go of all the expectations and hope of any kind of reward, any kind of result. So we shouldn't, when we are practicing the Dharma, especially here the Lojong, the Bodhisattva path, you know, we shouldn't have any expectations that by my practice, you know, so that people will, you know, be impressed by my practice. People will like me, you know. People will be, people will be attracted to me because I'm so calm, because my practice, because I will be so calm, because I will be so compassionate, because I will be patient. So I will have more friends, more people will like me, I will attract more people, and so on. Or I will have a, you know, good reputations. People will like me. People will talk good about my practice. So here is the purpose. You shouldn't have any intentions or motivation to impress others. It's not to impress others. You know, or, you know, if I do my practice, if I get better, good practice, then maybe I might be able to attract people, and I can kind of, have many disciples, so on. You know, again, if that kind of motivation comes, again, there is some kind of expectations for that. Or because people will impress, then people will, give me more support, and so on. Or even just, you know, if I practice, you know, I will have better health. You know, I will have a better health, physically, emotionally. Still, there is some kind of expectations. You are doing practice in order to have a better physical and emotional health. Better, and still that is hoping and expecting certain reward in this life. If we have that kind of expectations and hope, you know, it dilutes your practice. You know, it dilutes your practice. It dilutes your good practice because of such expectations. it compromises your practice. It pollutes your practice. And also a lot of time, it leads you to a lot of disappointment in the future. You do the practice and then you don't have the same effect that you expected, you know, and then we get disappointed. Then it becomes another source of disappointment. You know, we are trying to do the practice because in order to overcome a lot of disappointment that we have with our life. And now the practice itself becomes another source of disappointment. But if we don't have any kind of that kind of expectation and hope for any reward, we wouldn't have that disappointment. So we don't need to go through another disappointment in our life, you know. So I think maybe yeah, we will have a short break. And again, please feel comfortable without any hesitations to ask any questions by writing or by raising your hand or by unmuting your mute. Okay, thank you. I think in few, I think maybe in many years now, I think I haven't done any kind of, you know, particular practice for myself, whether it's you know, I haven't done any kind of, like, let's say medicine Buddha practice for my health. I haven't done any kind of or even practice to overcome my obstacles. Generally, when I do practice, I try to think of overcoming all the obstacles everyone's and for the health of all sentient beings. Mine is taking, when I say all sentient beings, for all sentient beings, I don't have to think mine, you know, it is there. And similarly, you know, when we think of purifying all the negative karma and all the delusion, all the obscurations in general, you know, then sometimes we don't have to be so specific, oh, I need to purify because I'm going through some, due to my negative karma, I'm going through some challenges, whatever, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a health, whether it's a finance, or whatever, and to purify that, you know, it becomes too limiting, you know, too narrow and too limiting. You know, when you think of all sentient beings, all this, you don't have to think, I don't have to think so much myself or my family and this and that, you know, we all are included in that, you know. When I started to think myself or my family, it is still selfish attitude to some standards, you know, to a certain level. And so I think, yeah, that is the thing. Of course, when you are requested by particular specifically, then of course that we have to do that. But I think in general, you know, I think it's better to keep all bigger pictures, and then all others are kind of taking care inside. It's included in that, you know. And I think, yeah. So yeah, even so, as I mentioned, even though we have certain goal to achieve enlightenment in order to be greatest benefit to all sentient beings, and when all sentient beings, you are included there. We don't have to worry that you are not included in all sentient beings. We all are included in the all sentient beings when we are working for the benefit of all sentient beings, because we are one of the sentient beings. We are included. We shouldn't be thinking, oh, I've been excluded, so what will happen to me? Or I'm not taking care of myself. I'm only doing for some other people's. And you know, when we say all sentient beings, we are one of them. So, so I was saying we need to have that goal, but as I mentioned, we shouldn't be attached to the goal. We shouldn't be obsessed to the goal, you know. And another way of looking at it, by doing the practice itself, that itself is a reward. You have already been rewarded by doing the practice itself. You know, we don't have to look for some another reward somewhere there. You know, when we are hungry and when we eat, that itself is a reward. When I'm hungry, I drink. That itself is a reward. You know, and so the practice itself is a reward. We don't have to kind of look. And so when we do that practice, you know, for that kind of, for the benefit of all sentient beings, then, you know, that itself is the biggest reward. And so, yeah, so letting go of all those hope and expectation to reward, and then doing the practice. I think there were some questions. I will kind of. So there is. I think there is one question which says, is it okay for motivation to practice to gain merit, to relieve our suffering of attachment? Yeah, I think as I mentioned already, you know, we can have the motivations to achieve enlightenment. And in order to achieve enlightenment, we need to have all the conducive conditions, and that is the merit. We need to purify all the obscurations, that's the purifications. And of course, we need to overcome all the delusions. And for that also, we need conducive conditions and overcome the obscurations, obstacles. So I think that shouldn't be a problem. Here, I think the main is any kind of hope to reward that's driven by selfish attitude. Because here the Lojong is to reduce the selfish attitude. You know, so that is the one main thing. So then the other question was, would you please say more about applying antidotes when we notice our deluded thoughts? I think this become a very kind of broad cautions. Is a very broad cautions, because different deluded thought or delusion need to be applied antidote by different meditations of techniques. If it's attachment, there is particular meditation. Is anger, there's particular meditations. If it's a jealousy, the delusion, there is a different meditations. If we are feeling too much, you know, worry, fear, anxiety, there is a different meditations. If we are feeling too much kind of our mind low, you know, low self-esteem or depression, you know, as long as it's not too bad, and then there is a different meditation to uplift it, you know. If we are becoming too arrogant, different meditation to reduce that sense of pride and arrogance. So then once we notice that, first of all, identifying it, recognizing is the first step. Second stage is not giving continuity to that, delusional thoughts. And that means, you know, disengaging yourself from that delusional thought. You you recognize and you are aware of that, but you don't give you don't engage with that. You don't engage and involve with that. So if you don't engage and involve with that delusion thought, it doesn't last long. But if we started engaging with that, with other thoughts and chains and waves of endless thought, then we are involving and engaging with that delusional thought, and then that way we keep it alive, inflaming it and keeping it alive. And so if we learn one technique is to kind of watch it, identify, recognize, watch it. Oh, that is anger is anger has arises, attachment has arises. Oh, the ignorance has arises. Oh, pride has arises. So just being aware, but then not giving any kind of, not engaging it, so that is one way. So if we are able to do that, then whatever delusional thought, it will not last long. It will not last long. So that is one way. The other way is going back to the breath. Can be helpful. Just focusing the breath. But then we apply whatever antidote that I have mentioned. We can't go each of different antidotes meditation to each of different delusion. That there are different individual kind of meditations and then there are general meditations that can be applied to all of them. And again, whether it become effective or not, I guess it depends, to individuals, how they practice, how they are able to. For example, meditating on impermanence can be helpful in dealing with any of those delusional thoughts. Meditating on impermanence of the object of the anger, the object of the attachment, the object of the jealousy, the object of the pride, all of them. And meditating on emptiness of all the objects of the delusion itself, and yourself, where the delusion is arising, to whom the delusion is arising. And so again, meditating on impermanence, meditating on emptiness of that particular delusional object of that delusional and delusion itself, and the person who is self who has that delusion thought. So those can be, I think that is some of the things that you can do once you recognize those delusional thought. And so I think there are few different kind of technique, different way of applying kind of method or technique, and one can kind of and sometimes even when we are trying to particularly those meditations, sometimes if it doesn't become effective, it doesn't work, then sometimes you can involve the gurus or the Buddha and all the bodhisattvas and request their blessings, inspirations, so that our practice meditation can become more stronger, more powerful, more effective. And sometimes that can be also helpful, when meditation doesn't go so well and effective, sometimes that can be helpful. And sometimes again, while you are trying to meditate, whatever different meditation you are using, whether it's impermanent emptiness or the individual meditations in relation to individual delusions, sometimes even when you are doing it is still not being effective. And sometimes maybe you do some purification in order to become effective, and maybe that can help. And sometimes maybe you do some other practice to create more merits when it's not working, and then by doing that it can become effective. And again, it's not, these are kind of as we see in all Lamrim and all teachings, they explain about the importance of the purification and accumulation method in order to have a successful meditation and practice. But also individual experiences. Some of the retreat, some of the monks and lay people who have dedicated their whole life in the meditations, like in Dharamsala and some other places. Sometimes that is what they experience. Sometimes, a lot of time they have nice meditation and good meditation and clarity and all of that. But then there are times when they struggle that. No matter how much they try to meditate, still they struggle. And then some of them, they start doing some, water bowl offerings or some form of purifications, and then it started to change again. And that is their experience, individual experiences, So yeah. So I think then there is another, I think there's one more questions. And there was one question. One of the refuge prayers says, but most of all, I take refuge in my holy guru forever. Why do we take more refuge in the holy gurus than in the three jewels? I think this practice mainly comes from the Vajrayana tantric practice. Like in the Sudrayana, the main is the three refuge, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Even in Pali tradition, I forgot that they have this taking refuge Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. So that, but in tantric, then the importance of the guru, because of the importance of the guru, especially from tantric point of view, because and so I think that is where the taking refuge to guru is emphasized very much, and guru devotion is also emphasized very strongly, more in the Vajrayana tantric practices. And so again, I think I don't want to go too much detail on that, but that is the cases. Yeah, one way of looking at it is, everything that we receive from the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, comes through the guru. We are able to have some understanding what Buddha is, what Dharma is, what Sangha is, through the gurus, their teachings, their guidance, their advices, their instructions. And if we have developed any sense of little Dharma within ourselves, whether it is the practice of 10 non-virtuous actions, practice of 10 virtuous actions, or whether we have any other realizations of little bit of love, compassion, bodhicitta, wisdom, again, all this come through our practice, and we are able to practice because we learn all the method, the instructions and advice coming from the guru. So through the guru's guidance and inspirations, examples, and teachings, we are able to learn and apply. By applying, we are able to develop certain level of Dharma. Through that, we are able to develop as convictions, strong conviction in the Dharma, because we experience ourselves with our own experience. Now we are starting to see some positive changes, transformations. So we have more faith, conviction in the Dharma. And once we have more faith and conviction in Dharma, then we started to have more convictions and faith in the Buddha, who taught to start with, who taught that, and then to Sangha, who are also inspiring and who are practicing Dharma. And so then that's how we develop even more faith, more conviction in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. And again, basically coming, and so that because of that, because of the kindness of the Guru in that way, so that I think that is why it is emphasized. And again, as I mentioned, mostly is in those refuge coming with Buddha Dhamma Sangha and the Guru is mostly from the Vajrayana practice, Vajrayana. Yeah, okay. So then we go to the next commitments, that is avoid poisonous food. I think we all want to avoid that, isn't it? Who want to eat that? Is anyone interested? So what it means is here, normally the food give us nourishment, nourishing food give us nourish our body and mind, and it make us healthy. Is beneficial, is needed, and that keep us alive and healthy, But if the food is poisonous, then it doesn't help that. It damages you, it harms you, it doesn't help you. It instead of healthy, it makes you unhealthy. Instead of keeping you alive, it will take your life. It doesn't nourish you, And the same way, our practice, such as, refraining from, let's say, non-virtuous, any of 10 non-virtuous actions is a virtuous, is a meaningful, is a beneficial, is a helpful, that nourish our this life, future life, nourish the attainment of liberations, enlightenment, and so forth, because they act as a foundations, and it nourish all this different level of happiness, different level of realizations, different level of enlightenment, or such as creating a marriage, is a virtuous, is a meaningful, is a beneficials, or purifications, for example, is a helpful, meaningful, beneficials, that keep our practice healthy. All this practice, help our practice to be more healthy and beneficial and helpful, But if all these practice are motivated by selfish attitude, then it is a poisonous, like a food poisonous food is like a poisonous food. Then your virtues, your practice has been kind of diluted, polluted, So then it doesn't become, one, you will not be able to achieve as much benefit that we can receive from those practice if we don't have that selfish attitude. If that is not motivated by selfish attitude, the benefit of those practice can be, great. But because of the selfish attitude, the benefit is very limited. We make that selfish attitude make it be the practice becoming very smaller in terms of getting the benefit from that practice. Out of selfish attitude and attachment this life, if we practice any of those practices for just this reason, then the benefit is only for this life. If we practice that for the benefit of future, then we get benefit for this life as well as future life. If we practice same with the motivation for the liberation, then it bring a benefit this life, future life, and for the liberations, not more than that. But if we practice without any selfish attitude, with a cherishing thought for others, loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, then the benefit is limitless. The benefit is limitless. Then it becomes cause for the happiness of all sentient beings. And the happiness of, then it becomes cause for happiness of all different levels, this life, future life, liberation, fully enlightenment, and that. So, so it limits when we have selfish. And then when you talk from both sides of a path, from both sides of a practice, from both sides of point of view, any practice that is motivated selfish attitude, it is something to be abandoned, because that is obstacles, obscuration to the both Siddha and both sides of path. And so therefore, for a Bodhisattva practitioner, true Bodhisattva practitioner, then even that practice become poisonous. Normally, if you are not practicing Bodhisattva, it is not a poisonous. But when you are practicing Bodhisattva practice, then it becomes a poisonous, because it becomes obscurations, obstacle for your generation of bodhicitta mind and all the Bodhisattva path. So, but also we have to be also, realistic, and again, I kind of repeat that many times, and I've repeated many times in the past, and again, I continue to repeat, because especially a lot of our Western students tend to take it too extreme, and so then they think, oh, I'm hopeless because I have all the practice I do have some level of selfish attitude. And then they feel, oh, I'm a bad practitioner, I'm hopeless, or I'm a bad practitioner, or maybe you think, oh, it's hopeless, that therefore better not to do practice. There's no point of doing practice because it is still driven by selfish, and therefore, so again, as I have already shared that story with before, but one day I was, someone was driving me, and I was talking, and we were discussing and talking about, his kind of experience with the Dharma over the few years that he had practiced, and then he was, and when I asked him, did you see any kind of changes and transformations over these years? and he said, "Oh, I don't see any much. I haven't seen any much transformation or any much of changes, or he can't see it, or and then I started to ask him, do you think of all sentient beings? And he said, yes. And sometimes do you pray and do you try to generate some motivation for all sentient beings? He said, yes. Do you used to think like that way before you met the Dharma? And he said, no. Never had a thought of all sentient beings, So, of course, we are not perfect at the moment. But then you can see you have already made your attitude has already changed. Even you are not aware, you are thinking about all sentient beings, even though it's not fully there, but you are some side is thinking. And so I think that is one thing we have to kind of, one of the things that we have to rejoice instead of beating up yourself. Do you get it? Especially like when we are studying, like Lojong, because we are talking specifically very Bodhisattva practice, and where is high kind of already kind of talking about a high level of practice. And so then when we try to compare ourselves to each of those verses, each of those lines, we feel like we are not there, and then we feel like we feel like that we have not gone anywhere or any further or like that. But if we really analyze, then definitely we have made some progress. Definitely we have made some progress in our attitude, in our behavior, even though we cannot think of all sentient beings all the time, but definitely we try to think of all sentient beings few times in the day. We try to pray for all sentient beings and so that is very precious. It's very precious. Not everyone think of that way. It's not to put them down, but it is just that they don't have they haven't met the Dharma to open their mind to be able to see and think of all sentient beings. So in that way, something that we can rejoice, something we can, even though we are not totally unselfish at the moment, but definitely, we can try to reduce the selfishness slowly. It requires time, patience, perseverance. And so, yeah, so I think maybe we will kind of conclude that, okay?
So, excuse me, I just wanted to mention to everyone, I think you know this, but I usually put the dedication prayer lists in at the end of class, and you can download it, but I do that after every class. And if you've got any more prayers that beings you'd like us to pray for, please let me know. Thanks.
May all beings everywhere plagued by the suffering of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merit. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sound. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored, finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drink. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvest. May all medicine be effective and wholesome prayer bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be free from quickly be free from their elements, whatever disease they are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be free. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain. Until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparable kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subdued moral way, who serve as a bountiful barrier of all, sustaining, preserving, spreading Manjunath victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayer, honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.